Welcome, one and all, to the ancient journey. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us. Today's journey, Josef Fritzl. She's 42 and she looks 62. Her hair is white and she wears it in a sloppy, crudely cut manner. The wrinkles on her face are like a road map that show the rough terrain of a life lived long, cold, and hard. She's thin, but that's not the right word for it. Gaunt may be a better word. Her skin, stretched over her frame, is paper thin and almost as white. But there was a time when Elisabeth Fritzl was a young, vibrant woman ready to take on the world. At 18 years of age, Elisabeth Fritzl was just starting her life. She had recently graduated high school in the small Austrian town of Amstetten. She had taken some courses on waitressing. She was working as a waitress at a gas station and a restaurant near her home, saving money, and was looking forward to one day moving out and starting a family. Elisabeth has one more important reason for wanting to leave home. Since 1977, when Elisabeth was just 11 years old, her father, Josef Fritzl, has been sexually abusing her. Her father had been doing work to the house since 1978, adding a basement extension. In 1983, local inspectors verified that the expansion had been completed according to local building codes. However, Fritzl had been excavating what would soon be a prison in the basement. Josef Fritzl was born in 1935 in Amstetten. He was an only child and he was raised by his mother. At 21, Josef married Rosemary and had 2 sons and 5 daughters. Fritzl was an electrical engineer and also worked at a construction company. He not only owned his own home, but he also had several rental properties. In 1967, Fritzl raped a 24-year-old nurse in the town of Linz. He was also suspected of another rape in the area, and he was arrested for indecent exposure several times. However, his criminal record was expunged after 25 years. By his own testimony, at around 1981, Fritzl had begun construction of the prison cell. He installed a sink, a toilet, and a hot plate for cooking. He later added more space by creating a passageway to another basement under his property that only he knew about. The hidden prison cell had a nearly 18-foot-long hallway that led to it, a small storage area, and 3 open rooms that were connected by small hallways. Large, heavy doors acted as a security measure for the prison, some of them weighing half a ton. The main entrance door was protected by a keyless entry lock. In total, 8 doors separated the cell from the outside world. In 1980, Josef's mother, Maria, passes away. What effect this had on him is not known, but what follows begins a decades-long nightmare for his daughter Elisabeth. One day, in 1984, Josef convinces Elisabeth to help him install a door in the basement. He tricks her into standing on the prison side of the door, and when the door is closed, he knocks Elisabeth out and tosses her further into the cell, where she will remain imprisoned for almost 25 years. Josef has been raping his daughter since the 1970s, and he knows that she is graduated and has a job, and he's about to lose her. She's working, and when she saves up enough money, she will probably be gone. She's tried to leave once before. In 1983, Elisabeth had attempted to run away to Vienna. She was the age of 15 at the time and was trying to flee her abusive home. But for whatever reason, Josef's abuse was never brought to light when the police found her and returned her home. Josef had lost his mother. He wasn't about to lose his daughter. After he locks her in the basement, Elisabeth's mother, Rosemary, goes into a panic over her missing daughter. She files a missing persons report with the police. For Josef, that just won't do. He needs to get the police to move off of this case quickly before they begin snooping around and discover his basement prison. A month goes by, and Josef forces Elisabeth to handwrite a letter. In it she writes that she is tired of her family, and she's staying with a friend, and warned her parents not to look for her. When the letter is shown to police, Josef volunteers to them that Elisabeth had likely joined a religious cult. The trick works. The police, Elisabeth's brothers and sisters, and Rosemary don't give up hope on finding Elisabeth, but they do give up the chase. Elisabeth is not forgotten, but she isn't going to be found anytime soon. Fritzl begins to visit Elisabeth in the prison on a daily basis and rape her. In November of 1986, the horror Elisabeth endures grows exponentially as she has a miscarriage. Despite this, Josef's visits and rapes continue. In 1988, Elisabeth gives birth to a child. It won't be the last. Over the next 2 decades, Josef fathers numerous children with Elisabeth. They are Kirsten, Stefan, Lisa, Monica, Alexander, and his twin brother, who dies 3 days after birth, and Felix. Here's where the story becomes even stranger. Elisabeth and the family are crowded in the tiny cell. She begs Josef to allow her to make more room. Fritzl allows it, but he puts Elisabeth and the children to work digging by hand. They dig the cell to an enlargement of 600 square feet, but it's still too small. So Josef devises a plan. One day in December of 1994, 10-month-old Monica is found outside of the Fritzl front door. Shortly after she's discovered, Rosemary receives a phone call from Elisabeth. She asks Rosemary to look after the child. Rosemary reports this to the police and also mentions to them that she's not sure how Elisabeth would have possibly gotten her new unlisted phone number. Rosemary is now taking care of Monica, who is the daughter of Josef and Elisabeth. Satisfied that this trick worked so well, Josef performs it again and again. So many times, in fact, that he decides that Felix, Kirsten, and Stefan need to stay in the basement. Rosemary can't take care of any more children. And in the cruelest of ironies, Josef and Rosemary file to adopt the children. Because Josef's criminal record had been expunged, he's allowed to. In April of 2008, Kirsten, who's now 19 years of age, falls unconscious due to kidney failure. Years of malnutrition and life in the basement has taken its toll. Frantic, Fritzl arranges for her to be taken to the hospital. A few days later, on April 26th, he releases Elisabeth and the children from the basement and announces to his wife that Elisabeth has decided to return home with her children. Later that night, news travels from the hospital to the local police. A tip tells the story of the last 24 years of hell that Elisabeth has endured. Josef and Elisabeth are taken into custody, and Elisabeth tells the police the entire sordid tale. Josef is sentenced to life imprisonment for murder, incest, rape, coercion, enslavement, and false imprisonment. Fritzl claimed that he and his daughter's relationship, while wrong, was consensual. Elisabeth was a wild child who needed to be reined in, and the basement was the best way to do that. He had learned to do this after he had locked his own mother in their attic until her death. He stated he had been bricking up her window and then finally locked her in the attic. Newspapers speculated that his mother had been locked in the attic for nearly 20 years until her death. Josef defended himself by saying he often bought flowers for Elisabeth and furnished her and the children with food, clothing, and toys. After all, he wasn't a monster, was he? Elisabeth and her children are free of Josef now, but the issues they have from imprisonment have ruined their lives. Kirsten grew nearly mad, tearing out her hair in clumps. Stefan walked poorly due to a bad back from having to spend his life hunched over in the basement. Normal sensory events such as doors closing or lights dimming would cause the children to launch into panic attacks. Elisabeth and Rosemary's relationship also fell apart, as Elisabeth resented how complacent her mother was during her upbringing and how easily she went along with Josef's stories. In 2013, workers filled in the basement of the Fritzl home with concrete. The prison was no more. Josef Fritzl changed his last name to Mehrhoff after getting into several fights in prison. A 2019 report stated that Fritzl's health was rapidly declining and he had no will left to live. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing the journey.